This is the first annual Gashimov Memorial in memory of Grandmaster Gashimov, who passed away recently. This is the first edition, 2014. Great loss to the chess world and to the human world as well, both. He was a really good guy and a great chess talent. He will be missed. It's funny, the good ones seem to go first. Oh well. Hi folks, John Cordisco back again. Well, it's been a while since I've done a video on my buddy from the United States, Nakamura. This is the first annual Gashimov Memorial 2014, round 1. It's Nakamura from the United States versus Caruana, Italian-American representing Italy. Gashimov was a great player, and I think from the small interviews that I've seen online over the years, he was a really good guy too, as well as a great talent. His death is extremely sad. Seems the nice people, excuse me, it seems the nicer people go first. Anyway, enough of that. This is Nakamura versus Caruana. It's a longer game, so we're going to get to it here. It's going to be a symmetrical English in the end, even though it's knight to f3. d4, c takes, knight takes, c6. I'm sure this is theory. Bishop, knight, bishop, bishop b4. Got my Fritz 13 computer on off screen. Tiny advantage for white. Nothing really that major. The only problem I see at all is for black is his light squared bishop. We'll see how that works out. Black castles. Bishop b2, b6. White castles, bishop a6. That's how black's going to develop his light squared bishop. Get him outside the pawn chain without moving the d or e pawns. Bishop d6. Now the next move for Nakamura isn't one on the computer. He played knight d2, which made a tiny advantage for white. I think the computer calls for the top two moves, and they're close together. Rook to c1 and bishop e3. Bishop e3 I don't get. I can see rook c1. Nakamura went knight to d2. Rook c8. Rook e1 for Hikaru. Knight to d7 for Fabiano. Now they're doing a lot of knight maneuverings here. b4. Getting some space, and of course you're threatening. Pawn here. Causes the bishop to get off of that diagonal. Then rook to c1. It comes out the same. a6. This is an interesting position. White's got a lot of space. Black's a little cramped, but it's pretty much even game. Bishop f1. Maybe white wants to advance the e-pawn. Rook e8. Queen e2. Knight to c5. Bishop e3 by Hikaru, hitting the b6 pawn. Knight comes up. Knight to a4. Interesting. Knight on e to d7. A lot of maneuvering around right now. It's quite a long game, so I'm going through this fairly quick. Queen c7. f3 finally, reinforcing the e4 pawn. It's good to have pawns guard your pawns instead of pieces where you have to tie up your pieces. Bishop c6. Knight c3. Queen to b8. Tiny advantage, half a point for white. King h1. Now, I don't know if anyone noticed this yet or not. There's only been one pawn from each side exchanged. All the pieces are on the board except for 2 pawns. How complicated do you want to get? Bishop d8. So they're just doing maneuvering. They're just maneuvering around, waiting for a break. Bishop c7, g3. These kind of games are very taxing because you've got so many things to figure out with so many pieces. Queen A8, getting that nice diagonal here by Caruana against Nakamura. Well, sorry about that. Bad line. This line here. Rook to A1. Bishop comes back. Boy, I'll tell you, a lot of maneuvering going on here. H6. Rook E to C1. Queen to B8. Rook back to E1. This is round one. I think these guys are just getting settled in and they don't want to really push too hard. Queen to A8 again. Two-fold repetition. Queen to B8. And it's Hikaru that stops the three-fold repetition with F4. Now we're going to finally see some development here. E5. Finally get a pawn break. Knight takes. If D had taken instead, Bishop B3. After knight takes, knight to D5. Knight takes. C takes. Bishop D8. Finally get to see some action here. Knight to F3. Peter suggested maybe B5. Then after that, pawn takes, queen takes, Bishop F6 with a small advantage for white. You know, when we talk about advantages on here, one side might have an advantage over the other, but it might not be enough of an advantage to win. Quite different. Knight to D7. Queen D3. Still a lot of maneuvering. Bishop H3, hitting the knight. Bishop takes, queen takes. Rook takes C1. Rook takes. Still basically an even game. I know this isn't very exciting chess, but it's the first round. It's my buddy Hikaru, so there's no way I could not show this game. It actually is an interesting game. I went through it a little quick because it's such a long game. Queen to D8. King to G1. Rook to E7. Currently Hikaru is number 8 in the world. Rook to C3. A5. Hikaru decides to close it up. Fabiano goes knight to C5. Rook to E3. Bishop C8. Hikaru backs the bishop off, wants to keep him. Bishop G4. Knight to E1. Bishop H5. Knight. Bishop back. Now the computer did that. It's showing that black's ganging up on the E4 pawn. Pretty funny. Queen to C4. Now if knight had gone to A3, as some of the one computer suggested, it's rook to E8. There's not much difference. After queen to C4, rook to E8. Knight to D4. I think maybe queen to D4 should have been considered as well. After knight to D4, queen to F6, knight to B3, knight takes, and this is where I think it's got a question mark on the computer here. But the computer shows the first move is rook takes B3. And the computer shows rook takes B3 is a questionable move, which I think is absolute nonsense. That or queen is just as good. If the queen had taken instead, queen to D4, bishop F3, and it's a huge advantage. So why rook takes B3 is a questionable move? Really don't know. Carl made the right move. Heck with the computers. Queen A1 check. King F2. F5. Rook to E3. Looks like maybe white has a little incentive, or excuse me, black has a little incentive going here, but not really. F takes. Bishop takes. Queen to E5. King to F3. Bishop takes. Rook takes. Queen to F5. King. Rook. Queen to D3. Rook to F8. King. Queen check. King. Rook checks. King to b3. Queen. Rook d8. And this is where these guys agreed to a draw. I went through a little quick because it wasn't that eventful of a game. A lot of maneuvering going on. It sometimes happens that way in the English. Hikaru hasn't played in a major tournament like this in quite a while. I know he's been studying really hard from what I hear. Anyway, folks, that's round one of the Gashimov Memorial 2014. Hey, buddy Hikaru got a draw against Caruana. Even though with the white pieces, that's still a good result. It was a tough game, I think. Position had a lot of pieces on it, so hopefully these guys won't wear themselves out too much. Round two will be coming shortly. I want you all to remember, if you think chess is just a game, you're not playing it right. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.